of Europe. Today's conference is titled Dialogue on the Future of Europe. Is enlargement a key to the future? This is on the EU agenda and generated lively debates in recent years. The discussion is also very timely as we are approaching the December General Affairs Council, which will be of crucial importance regarding the credibility of the enlargement process. Hence, our first roundtable discussion will address this very issue. The title is Credible Enlargement Perspectives for a Stronger Europe. First, let me welcome Judit Varga, Hungarian Minister of Justice.
Az elnökség ide vonatkozó erőfeszítéseit, úgyhogy most akkor megadom a szót egyenként az előadóknak.
Felszólaló, az első hozzászóló, miniszterasszony, kérem, mondja el hozzá előadását, tartsa meg. Köszönöm szépen.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Jó napot kívánok, tisztelt hölgyeim és uraim, tisztelt miniszterasszony, tisztelt államtitkár úr, tisztelt biztos úr, tisztelt asszony.
Honorable Madam Minister, Secretary of State, Commissioner, Honorable Madam MP, dear colleagues, Minister and dear MP, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, please allow me to personally express my gratitude to Jadranka Joksimović, Minister, and Secretary of State Gašper Dovžan for coming to Budapest in person, allowing us to discuss the future of Europe together, including one of the key shared future is the promise of a flourishing and strong future. However, we need to write that future together, and therefore EU institutions and member states need to cooperate to get to that target. The countries of Europe have a shared history, a deep-rooted shared history, so I'm firmly convinced that they can only have a shared future as well. Dear guests, we are living through critical times. The European Union has been hit by a number of crises in recent years.
Eljött végre az ideje, hogy új országokat is üdvözöljünk a közösségünkben, és erősebb nemzeteken álló, erősebb Európai Uniót építsünk fel együtt. Mi olyan Európában hiszünk, amely a mások által felállított szabályok követése helyett képes meghatározni a saját érdekeit. Ahelyett, hogy folyton csak reagálunk a minket körülvevő világra, a globális események alakítójává és irányítójává kellene válnunk. Véget kell vetni az önkényes, elhamarkodott döntéseknek, és hosszú távú, stratégiai szemlélettel kell hozzálátnunk az előttünk álló nehézségek leküzdéséhez, építve az európai tagállamok által kínált egyedi és kreatív megoldásokra. Tisztelt hölgyeim és uraim! Mi, közép-európaiak tudjuk, hogy a csatlakozás útja néha köröngyös. Számos kihívással kell megküzdenünk, nem ritkán fájdalmas kudarcokkal is szembesülünk.
We need to overcome difficulties and sometimes we face painful failures. During my career, I have seen bureaucracy in Brussels, the kind of bureaucracy that actually served as an obstacle to the efficient operation of the European Union. In the case of Juncker's, we could also see a lack of political will. And we all remember that at the beginning of his mandate as the president, he firmly rejected recognize and acknowledge the reforms and efforts of these countries, and finally it should fulfill its obligations concerning the enlargement. There is only one way, and that is the way forward. And the affected countries must continue walking the path they started walking, and they must actually preserve the trust despite receiving mixed signals from Brussels from time to time. Ladies and gentlemen, which issue could be more forward-looking than the extension of the European Union? I am convinced to make progress in such an important matter. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that today's conference is a unique opportunity to have an honest and open discussion with our partners about the opportunities and challenges of extension. We need more dialogue participation and more visits in each other's capitals to allow us to share first-hand information about experiences and thus deepen our trust in each other. Right from the beginning, Hungary has called for the involvement of the West Balkans region in this series of discussions, and therefore we welcome this development.
Hogy tartsa meg a hozzászólását. A miniszter úrnak a délelőtt folyamán rögtön egy újabb hivatalos programja lesz, úgyhogy felszólása után távoznia kell, elengedjük őt. Köszönjük, hogy itt van közöttünk. Miniszter úr, önné a szó.
Jó napot kívánok mindenkinek, tisztelettel köszöntöm Önöket. Kinga, a helyzet még ennél is drámaibb, mert nem csak hogy hivatalos programon van, de 2 parlamenti bizottság akar meghallgatni, tehát ezen programpontok ismeretében sokkal szívesebben maradnék, de hát évenkénti egyszerű kötelességnek decemberben így meg kell felelni a parlamenti bizottságban is. Kedves Judit, nagy tisztelettel köszönöm a
conference series. Jadranka, I'm so happy that you're here. Thank you very much. I'm ever so grateful. I'm very hopeful that in the next coming period we are going to have the opportunity to welcome you.
Hogy mely területeken lenne szükség ezen kompetenciák visszaadására a tagországoknak, akkor én 3 olyan...
Then, of course, since last year, the global pandemic. All in all, I believe that the responses given by Europe to these 3 crises were unfortunately too much ideologically based. The opportunity of a democratic debate was very much limited on these issues. If you did not represent the mainstream position, you were immediately branded, stigmatized, and these responses immediately went against the interests of the European people. Therefore, I believe that these responses fundamentally have led to a weakening of the European Union, while if they would have been left in the national competences, the European Union could have come out stronger at the end of these crisis situations than it did. I would also like to add some arguments to my statements on the insufficiency of the crisis response for the economic crisis. For 20 years ago, it was 20%, now it's 18% the GDP share of the EU, while our competitors managed to either keep or to increase. China's GDP share is 18%. 20 years ago, they were at 4%. We were at 21%. So they are going up, we're going down. While the 18% of the global GDP is what Europe stands for, in Europe, we pay 27% of the social expenditure in the world. Of course, these two tend look to be in dissonance to each other. And of course, for the future, it is not the most positive picture that it depicts for competitiveness. And it is this ever worsening economic perspective that is basically aggravated by further communistic-like proposals that has to do with certain market-based, market-secured competitive advantage that would be curtailed by political decisions. This is, for example, the negative discrimination of nuclear power. This is, for example, the mobility package that is putting Central European countries at a disadvantage, but also several other endeavors. And these do not say anything but the fact that there are some countries that dare to make courageous decisions, There were sub-countries that dared to make the decisions that had to do with financial austerity and financial discipline. Other countries were simply incapable. They were not courageous enough. They did not want to take the political risk. They didn't have a stable enough political system. And now they want to actually change this political advantage, competitive advantage, with political means. And of course, if this is the approach that is going to dominate the economic policy of the European Union, if they will not allow actual economic competition among member states, then the European Union's external competitiveness will deteriorate further. We believe that the competition of tax systems, the competition of investment incentives are indeed in favor of the European Union, serve the interests of the European Union. So this competition should be allowed among member states. Instead, what we are seeing is that they want to harmonize the tax systems. This in certain countries should lead to tax increases. And in many cases, the European Commission is sitting on, for months or years even, on requests from member states when the member state wishes to give support for job creation. Despite all these endeavors, we will continue to reduce taxes quite naturally from January 1, for example, and we also wish to extend widespread investment incentives to create new jobs or to bring in new technologies to Hungary. The second such crisis situation is the migration situation itself, where again I believe there is a total failure of Brussels' migration policy, and this is testamented, I guess, best testamented by the fact that the European Union today is actually under a migration pressure from 3 geographical directions, which has never happened before. Of course, it's a separate cup of tea. That was it not the objective of Brussels' migration policy, to be under as much a pressure as possible, to have as many migrants arrive as possible? Is it not the international liberal mainstream's objective? Because migration is the best, most efficient tool to actually alter, to change the national framework, the Christian traditions. And it's a dead giveaway to see what Brussels is actually supporting and what it's not supporting when it comes to migration. Brussels supports everything that increases migration and doesn't support anything that stops migration. It seems technical, it seems boring, but it's telling that in the migration debate, basically text is basically the most important thing is what is the most important word that we should use in the text. Should we manage migration, and should we not use the word stop? And Brussels supports everything that is about management. They support NGOs that have the closest of cooperation with human smugglers that operate ships to bring scores of migrants to Europe, support the so-called social integration projects that have completely failed in Western Europe, but do not support border defense and do not support any measures made in the interest of border defense. So much so that since the 2015 period, EU is preparing for the largest of migration procedure. Post-Cotonou is a migration agreement that Brussels wants to sign with 79 countries, and we are having to actually struggle to actually ensure that this can only be a mixed agreement, that is a resolution of the European Council, which means that there needs to be a member state ratification for it. Ladies and gentlemen, if the objective is to stop migration, and that is what we want to do here in Central Europe, then we have to accept, based on the past 6 years, that only member states are able to do that. Only member states can stop migration. Therefore, all the competences with migration policy should be returned to the member states. Border defense should be supported, or at least should be recognized as a right, as an obligation. Furthermore, migration actually carries much more risk than it did in the past 6 years ever. Because we have to see that while earlier migration, I should say, started to pose a security then civilizational risk, because for terrorists it was an opportunity to actually get through borders and to spread their ideologies without limitation. And it is a civilizational risk because loud minorities quite visibly have started to oppress the large majority. Let's remember the choice between Christmas tree and cardboard boxes. Of course, pandemic is spreading much faster with the more people on the road. And while we are all being subjected to all kinds of PCR tests to be controlled, I do not believe that anybody arriving in migration flows would have 2 PCR tests from the past 72 hours. So, and this leads to the third issue, and that's the global pandemic. I believe that the global pandemic has provided ample proof that it is possible that institutions in Brussels can manage the situation well in peacetime. But when crisis is there, you need fast action. And when you need fast action, these institutions have failed. We were repatriating, of course, it was a mathematical wonder. The more people we brought home, the more people there were. We brought home more than 10,000 Hungarians. Then when everybody was home, we actually got a letter when everybody was home. We got a letter from the European Commission. They said we would like to pay for the repatriation now. Too late. Too little, too late. We were able to make good decisions, but this was true also for the procurement of medical equipment. There was absolutely no coordination. We were basically, it was a push and shove with European countries in China getting access to equipment for health. And of course, the Hungarian response to the global pandemic was successful because it was specifically national-based. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, all in all, I believe that if we look at economic, migration, or health crisis management issues, if the majority of the competences would be left to the nation states, then we will have a good chance of making the European Union strong again. And if these economic, migration, and health pandemic management competences will remain, then Brussels will have time to deal with what was their task from the beginning. Enlargement of Europe, for example, because that is a union competence. And it would be good that once we have lost the British, now that we have lost 1/7 of the GDP and 8% of the population of the EU, it would be good if we could turn this process around. In the Western Balkans, NATO is leading 3-0 to the European Union. And if we look, if NATO, if countries could comply with the security requirements of NATO, I don't quite understand what kind of excuses we can have. And of course, in the Foreign Affairs Council, we continue here, you know, the Russians, the Turks, Qatar, and Saudi, and the kind of influence they're gaining on the Balkans. If a team doesn't go on the field, they will never win the match. And of course, because in geopolitics, in global politics, there is no such thing as a vacuum. If we don't integrate this region, somebody else will. And then all we have to do is be in despair about it. But of course, we'll have no grounds to be in despair about it. So I do not think that it's an oversimplification of the story if we say that when it comes to the Western Balkans, fundamentally, whatever we do there in the Western Balkans is going to fundamentally define if the European Union is going to be strong. We in Hungarians are going to push for this in Budapest and Brussels, and with Belgrade, we will do everything to push this process in the right direction. Thank you very much for your attention and the invitation. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, for your presentation, and we will let you go. Wish you much success for the rest of the day. And thank you very much for joining us. And with that, I immediately pass the floor to Commissioner Olivér Várhelyi, who will deliver his presentation in English.
Commissioner, that you are with us today, and you are here in Budapest. The floor is yours.
Jó reggelt kívánok mindenkinek, egész jól tudok magyarul.
Good morning, everyone. My Hungarian is quite good, but as I was asked to speak in English, I will try and deliver my presentation in English, a comprehensive picture about the extension policy.
I'm not only honored to be able to represent the European Commission here in the Hungarian National Academy of Sciences, but also I'm at home in Hungary, and this is always the most difficult to explain what you do outside the country for your home crowd. So, first of all, I would like to thank Minister Judit Varga for the kind invitation, and also for Minister Szijjártó for the support that I get in my work. From them. I think I couldn't do without the support of all member states this job. And this is, I think, the most important when you want to understand what enlargement policy is all about. Enlargement policy is a strategy, a strategical choice of Europe when it comes to its own development. And this is why it is a crucial issue also when we talk about the future of Europe. Because enlargement is not only about what Europe thinks about itself, but what Europe thinks about its neighborhood and what form of common future we can design with our neighborhood. And in that, I think the most important word to use is the respect for our neighborhood, because without respect, it is very difficult to design any common future. And this is why it is very important that we have at least one of them represented here today, because we need to design the future together, because the Western Balkans shares the continent with us. We belong together economically, socially, culturally. And don't forget history. This is a fact, and this is not only a fact, but an undeniable reality, that we are interdependent with one another when it comes to the Western Balkans and the European Union. This is why it was very important that in Brdo this year, in October, when our leaders discussed again the future of the Western Balkans, the European future of the Western Balkans, there was a very clear commitment for the European perspective of the Western Balkans. And as you have seen, the European perspective as such is maybe the main driving force for reforms, for consolidating states after conflicts, and also to build more resilient democracies and societies in the Western Balkans. And we shouldn't forget the fact that it is the European path that is capable of bringing economic and social prosperity long term. But this is only the beginning of the journey where we are with the Western Balkans. Therefore, it is very important to include fully the Western Balkans in our discussions when we discuss the future of Europe. Judging from what I have heard from the two ministers today, I think we can already safely agree on one thing when we talk about the future of Europe. We want a Europe that is stronger, which is based on stability, security, and prosperity. Second, Europe can only get stronger if it integrates fully the Western Balkans, where security, stability, and prosperity is a very scarce resource but only Europe can help to deliver it on a long-term basis. For that, we have in place a framework that has stood the test of time, the so-called Copenhagen criteria. And these were not only valid for the accession back in 2004, when Hungary became a member of the European Union, but it is still valid today. These principles are supporting also the policy choices of the candidates when they make their own political reforms and when they choose their path for mid-term, long-term. This is the approach that has been refined over time, and this is the approach, unfortunately, which had to be renewed by this Commission, because this Commission has made enlargement its priority. In that spirit, we have started our mandate by dragging out from the complete halt enlargement policy. In the first couple of months, it was our task to find a political solution to a deadlock that has been blocking us from making progress in enlargement, and that has led to a shrinking acceptance and space for Europe in the Western Balkans. This is why we have proposed a revised methodology for the accession negotiations based on the 4 principles. I think I have already explained here in Budapest already several times. And based on these 4 principles, we have been able to obtain again the support of all the member states. And this has allowed us to speed up the process through the negotiating clusters, and it also gives greater incentives through an accelerated integration, sector by sector, in specific areas, and this should also increase the political steer that we have all been missing from the whole enlargement process. And don't forget that this has put, again, in the focus, the very core areas of fundamentals in the focus of the negotiations, meaning the need to deliver on reforms related to the rule of law, democracy, human rights, and so on. And it was on the basis of this that we have been able to break the deadlock last year in March. However, this is not enough, and this has not been enough to make the enlargement a real perspective for the Western Balkans. In parallel to this, to close the social and economic development gap, because this is the big challenge underlining the whole enlargement policy, how fast we can close this gap, to prepare for membership every day. We have proposed a significant investment opportunity because we have launched an economic and investment plan for the Western Balkans. This is something never seen before from Europe. The plan aims to support the long-term recovery after the COVID crisis, but also to help to bring the Western Balkans much faster, much closer to the European Union. The plan brings roughly 30 billion euros of investments to the Western Balkans. To put this into perspective, this is 1/3 of the GDP of the entire region. On top of this, we hope that through work within the region, an additional 1/3 of investments can be created through the regional cooperation within the region. The plan is built around connectivity that reinforces the links within the Western Balkans and with Europe. It includes flagship projects selected in very close cooperation with our partners in areas that are the main bottlenecks in front of economic development: sustainable transport, energy connectivity and diversification of energy resources and greener energy resources, digital connectivity and basic broadband high-speed infrastructures. It supports the green transition, the creation of sustainable growth and jobs. We apply the same growth strategy, actually, that was put in place for the EU member states. And this is why, if I want to grasp it in one sentence, I would say the plan is a recovery plan for the Western Balkans with the Western Balkans. Alongside the economic and investment plan, the region also made its move, which is a very strong political commitment on their side, by creating the common regional market. This was agreed by the 6 leaders of the Western Balkans in Sofia, November last year. And this is the most important complement to the economic and investment plan. Because there is little point improving the physical connectivity within the Western Balkans and improving the human capital of the Western Balkans, like roads, improved railways, connecting all the capitals, training of workers with new skills, creating new job opportunities in the economy. If technical administrative barriers, long custom checks, or other trade barriers remain intact. According to the World Bank, 1/3 of the GDP is lost of the entire Western Balkans because of these measures. So the Western Balkans could create another 1/3 of its GDP only by doing away with these restrictions and barriers. And not only that, but this could build trust, security, stability long term among the Western Balkan partners, and this can bring prosperity. In addition, we have already put forward a significant COVID assistance package as well, worth of 3.3 billion euros. And we have delivered almost 3 billion doses of vaccines for the Western Balkans, so that they also have a similar vaccination rate as the EU. We have been fast to act. We have been there first to help the region, and not only to help the healthcare workers, but also to help the economy to stay afloat. We have been financing the SMEs in the region. We have been providing macro-financial assistance for those who needed it. So we were first to act, and we were first to help. Now, if you want me, I can go one by one of the countries, but maybe I leave it to the questions and answers. I understand that there are a section dedicated to that. And let me turn to the last part. What does the Western Balkans need to do to speed up the accession? Because so far I've been talking about what Europe should do and has been doing to speed up the enlargement. In order to succeed, we need continued commitment and progress in the reforms. And these are necessary reforms to be able to take on the commitment as EU member state, taking over the EU acquis, as it is called in the Brussels gibberish. So basically the rules that govern the EU. We need stable institutions. We need the rule of law. We need human rights, the protection of minorities, and we need a functioning market economy which is capable of withstanding the competition of the market forces in the EU. As we are talking about enlargement, of course, we see that the Western Balkan citizens are the one moving their governments forward, maybe the strongest. We see that there's a huge public acceptance and public outcry for a European perspective. And therefore, we should consider the citizens of the Western Balkans as future EU citizens. So when we discuss with them, we should think about 2004, when we became Hungarians members of the European Union, and we should try to think about the years have passed, and also the development it brought to our country. But we should also be able to see and explain to our partners what development this can bring to the Western Balkans. We think that, therefore, it was a very good proposal by the co-chairs of the Conference on the Future of Europe to agree to extend the invitation to the conference to the 6 Western Balkan partners, to the plenary, and this should not be a missed opportunity, because we would also need to know what the Western Balkans would like to be in the European Union. What is the added value the Western Balkans can bring? I'm convinced that enlargement is a win-win geopolitical, geostrategic investment on both sides. And as I said, this is the only tool to bring peace, stability, and prosperity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Thank you for this excellent presentation and the questions you raised, the thinking, the thoughts which we have to think about further on. I'm sure you will have opportunity to get back to these ideas during the debate session, which we have later on. And now I'm very pleased that we have among us Jadranka Joksimović, the Minister of European Integration of Serbia. Thank you for coming to Budapest, and I ask you to invite you to have your presentation.
Thank you, dear Kinga. We know each other for a long time, and thank you, first of all, dear Judit and Commissioner, my friends Gašper and Andor as well, and really, honestly, thank all of you to providing us opportunity to address in such an important and significant institution of Hungarian Academy of Sciences. I'm honored to be there in front of all of you and to talk a little bit about not only the current state of play when it comes to EU integration of Serbia, but generally how we can contribute to this important discussion about the future of European Union, or future of Europe, which is, I think, the better sense. Of course, today's dialogue on the topical issue of the future of Europe is boldly framed by the question whether EU enlargement is a key for a stronger Europe, a Europe that has a future. Hungary and the Visegrad Four as a whole, and Slovenia, of course, throughout its presidency of the Council of the European Union, have undeniably expressed their unequivocal commitment to EU enlargement, primarily enlargement to the Western Balkans. I am certain that that common thread running through all their views on the EU enlargement policy is to being truly what gives an explanation, makes an identification, keeps an aspiration, upholds a vision, and provides a solution. The key to what is, in Churchill's words, a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma. Because sometimes we should, unfortunately, the current state of play about the enlargement policy, from time to time, it seems that these words in a way, suits to the current situation. What these views affirm is both economic and political actorness of the Western Balkans that is an integral part of the European Union, but misguidedly kept out of European integration, although capable to contribute to the Union that strives for more democracy and development, more freedom and functionality, more stability and sustainability, the better peace and protection of lives and livelihoods. In general, there are still in some EU member states, I would say, incredulous about the enlargement policy and of its very rational, its purpose and the mutuality, despite the officially adopted credible enlargement perspective for an enhanced EU engagement, the Western Balkans, as a clear document coming from the EU Commission. A credible enlargement perspective for an enhanced EU engagement, the Western Balkans, even these joint efforts put into devising the enhanced template for the conduct of the EU enlargement to the Western Balkans is again under the siege of politics conceived as a game of paper, scissors, rocks, and turned into a tournament among self-proclaimed nucracy, technocracy, and meritocracy. That is what we have seen for the last couple of years, and this is something that we are facing, all of us from the Western Balkan, more or less, because we are at the different stages of the EU accession process. There are candidate countries, acceding countries, potential candidate countries, but when it comes to the enlargement, I'm sure that we are all sharing this kind of feeling for the last couple of years. The technocracy, which I have mentioned, denies the purpose of enlargement policy, some of technocracies, I would say, since it sees not a single benefit either to economy or democracy coming from the Western Balkans. And that is obviously not true, but we are facing from time to time this kind of perspective. It is not a surprise that both the rock of nucracy and the paper of technocracy are in accord that the future of stronger Europe is in granting to the Western Balkans all cooperation possible except the institutions in a form of differentiated integration in the EU as a substitute for the membership and the sufficient payoff for all improved democracy and functional market economy. All such maneuvers are not new or creative, but more reiterative of the Prodis Commission tinkering that the EU is not an infinite extension, but a finite entity. At first glance, this is seemingly neat and objective logic of limits. At the closer looks, it could be seen that such logic is turned inside out to militate against the ever closer union. The scissors of meritocracy, on the other hand, are making the clean cut-off mutuality, and this world view there is now placed in the EU as it is for the others in Europe, or what that alternative to which the EU has no historical duty as it used to have for the former Central and Eastern Europe, or any common will to make with them as the members of the EU a Europe whole, free and stable, as it was provided in the Paris Charter for a New Europe in 1990s, where we have seen the commitment for European Union to itself to be unite from the south to east, from the south to north, and from the east to west, in order to be stable, free, and prosperous and at peace. I think that it is the right time to mention the words of the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, on October the 6th, just 2 months ago, and that was on the very 6th day of the month, so it's actually the 2 months, just 2 months ago, following the EU Western Balkan Summit held in Brdo, near Kranj in Slovenia, which I quote: "We want the Western Balkans in the European Union. There cannot be any doubt that our goal is enlargement. But in the meantime, the EU has to deliver. And in particular, the lack of decision for opening the negotiations with North Macedonia and Albania is jeopardizing our standing and our leverage in the region. Our credibility as a partner is at stake." This is the right diagnosis, I think, and EU enlargement partners in the Western Balkans do feel not some EU's enlargement fatigue, but the deliberate cut-off commitments and acting that lacks the credibility. No one is a strong actor, who is a strong actor, will never, ever perform badly on its own commitments. That's the point. Not about specific countries. Are you supporting Serbia or North Macedonia or Albania? It's about the credibility of the process that we have entered by our own political will. Accession process is a, I would say, meeting of two political wills. On one side, European Union, who wants to be more unified, stronger, more competitive. On the other hand, for the countries from the region of so-called Western Balkan, even I'm very skeptical about the term of Western Balkan, because I always wondered where is the Southern Balkan, because it's a part of European Union. Eastern Balkan is also a part of the European Union. So we from the Western Balkan, that should be geographically in a way closer to European Union, we are actually the only one from the rest of the Balkan not being part of the European Union. I think that there are a lot of, I would say, talks and narrative about geopolitical strategical interests and the lack of narrative considering the common European vision. Because if we only talk about geopolitical ideas and geopolitical goals, and strategical goals, then we have to identify what is strategical goal. If you need some kind of, I would say, instruments and logistic for, in order to reach your strategical goal, you need at least a lot of attention to the subject you want or you consider as a strategic goal. You need financial resources, and you need, of course, a clear plan. So sometimes I'm not very happy to listen all the time about geopolitical goals, because then I don't see a whole of, I would say, logistical needs that you have to provide. Even there are some good attempts that Commissioner Várhelyi mentioned throughout the economic investment plan and credible strategy and new methodology, revised methodology, but we have to be very clear on, I would say, strategical interest of European Union on one side, and of course, on the other hand, from us coming from Western Balkan, but never to forget that the idea of European Union is a vision for all European nations to be united and to be at peace. When I say united, I'm not like a federalist, I'm not providing any kind of support for a federalistic approach, not for some kind of nationalistic approach. I only see that the future of EU nations and countries is in their natural borders, and I think that is also including Western Balkan as well. On the other hand, when we talk about the strategy and the instruments for achieving these goals, that I also will once again quoted Commissioner Várhelyi about the revised methodology, economic investment plan, and all other things that we have mentioned here. I think that Serbia did everything it was necessary. We accepted new revised methodology immediately. We didn't know what will be the content of the new methodology, but we have shown trust in good intentions and the best intentions of European Union and member states to provide more credible, more predictable process, which will be easier to understand for, on one hand, our people, our public opinion, on the other hand, to give us clear path how we can improve and make it faster, our process, if we deliver on our obligations. I think that Serbia helped to European Union in some way, because we are the only accession country who has been fully ready for the new methodology. I have personally transformed all negotiation structures in our administration in order to meet criteria of new cluster methodology. Instead chapters, now we have cluster of common European politics that we are negotiating, gathering together all 35 chapters into 6 clusters, from rule of law, internal market, inclusive growth and competitiveness, to the green agenda and sustainable interconnectivity, resources, agricultural policy, cohesion policy, and the cluster 6, it's a foreign affairs and foreign policy. So we accepted that, and we started to prepare ourselves to be ready to open at least one cluster. Even we have been, in a way, phrased for all activities done in the frame of the cluster 3, competitiveness and inclusive growth, and cluster 4, green agenda. And I'm very grateful to Commissioner Várhelyi, because in the latest progress report, country report for Serbia, European Commission in a way, suggested to member states to open 2 clusters with Serbia at the upcoming intergovernmental conference during the Slovenian presidency, Cluster 3 and Cluster 4. In parallel, we were conducting and, in a way, delivering very, very difficult and demanding reforms in the area of rule of law, which is a precondition as a matter of so-called imbalance clause in our accession process, that there will be no progress if there is no previously progress in the area of rule of law and Brussels Agreement implementation. So in parallel, during the most difficult 2 years for the whole humanity, we haven't complained. We were not complaining and crying that it's not fair that you are changing the rules of game in the middle of the game. We have started our preparations, and we have done and finalized all necessary activities for the most important judicial reform in Serbia, the constitutional amendments which will change the way how we nominate judges and prosecutors in Serbia in order to reduce the political influence and to give them more, to give to the judicial branch of power more in a way, efficiency, but also more independent, to be more independent from the, any kind of political influence. I think this is extremely important, and I think this is something that is showing clear commitment of the government of Serbia and the people of Serbia, because at the end of the day, people of Serbia, citizens of Serbia, has to improve this, to approve these changes at upcoming referendum that we have been already fixing the date. It's the January the 16th. So our citizens will go and vote on referendum for these extremely important constitutional changes. So this was the precondition for the our new steps in the accession process, opening cluster. We hope that we can open both clusters. To be very frank, I think that now it's a reality that we will maybe open one cluster, cluster 4, which is very important, and it's very charming these days because it's about the Green Deal, it's about the sustainable interconnectivity, and gives a clear frame for the new important European Union investments in in Serbia when it comes to the green projects, I would say, and in a way to help Serbia and maybe also for the others in the region of so-called Western Balkan to have a smoother transition to the green transformation that we all need, because it's a very demanding process, it's a very expensive process, and before we see how the Just Transition Fund will be available for us as well from the region of Western Balkan, we need some important investments in this area. So I think that opening of the cluster 4 will definitely give a good frame and solid frame for the future investments from the European Union coming into the green deal of Europe that has been in a way well prepared for the Western Balkan throughout the green agenda for the Western Balkan that have been signed in Sofia a year and a half ago. So more or less, I wanted also to say many other things about the future of Europe, maybe in a more theoretical way, but wanted to use this opportunity in front of all of you to present what we have done and to show that being courage is also important in this process. Not to blame all the time European Union, not to blame some member states, because there are a lot of problems among European Union member states in different ways. But for us, it's important to show that we are dedicated. Even in those most difficult 2 years. That's why I think that what we have done is, in a way, even more important to show that even during the crisis you can do, if you want something to upgrade your reforms in different areas. And I want once again to tell you, really honestly, how much we appreciate Hungarian support. Because now we are in Budapest. Even we are sometimes criticized for Hungarian support because of some disputes and maybe some problems between Budapest and Brussels from time to time, we are in a way sometimes accused that it's not for us so good to have Hungarian as the best supporters. We are good neighbors, we have improved our relations, you are very important to us, your people, people of Hungarian minority in Serbia are well integrated and excellent, I would say, bridge for our future cooperation, and we cannot have this kind of luxury to lose your support, and we are very grateful and thankful to you, and we will never say no to your support. On the contrary, we would be very happy to have you as our supporters, and I think that is the best way to show how European values of good neighborly relations and continuous dialogue will make a clear benefit for our countries, but also for the future of European Union. Once again, thank you for organizing this high-level event, especially in this building, especially among this audience, and you will have really always good friends in Serbia. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Joksimović. Thank you, dear Jadranka. Thank you for your very nice words and for the whole presentation you gave to us. You can count on our support, for my support, for my colleagues' support from the Fidesz delegation, also in the European Parliament. And speaking about the European Parliament, let me introduce the next speaker of this morning session. Deli Andor, my distinguished colleague from the Parliament, Hungarian from Vojvodina. Please, the floor is yours.
Köszönöm szépen,
kedves
Kinga, kedves képviselőasszony, kedves miniszterasszony, biztos úr, poštovana gospođo ministarko Joksimović, poštovani državni sekretar Dovžan, és most angolul folytatnám.
And I'll continue in English, if you allow me.
Kinga was so kind to already mention my background, preparing for my today's presentation, I was really thinking what would be the introduction, and I thought that it's rather helpful to know the background of the certain speaker, because then you know what is the drive behind that person. And as it was already mentioned, I'm a Hungarian from the Vojvodina region in Serbia, and I got the honor and the opportunity in 2014 to become elected member of the European Parliament for Hungary. And for this reason, enlargement was never just an ordinary policy for me. It was rather a matter of personal nature. And to be more personal, just to say that when I was studying at the law school at the University of Novi Sad in Serbia, I always had a soft spot for international subjects, and I even finished a Magister Juris degree in EU law. And I was convinced that after the grand wave of enlargement in 2004, that the membership of Serbia was just around the corner. And this idea was even strengthened by the fact that in 2007, 2 additional countries joined the EU. But unfortunately, instead of shifting to a higher gear, the enlargement started to slow down. And I graduated law school of Novi Sad in November 2000. And unfortunately, it took additional 9 years for Serbia to obtain visa liberalization. And in 2012 or 2012, Serbia got the official status of a candidate country. And the official negotiations for membership commenced in 2014. The same year I got elected member of the European Parliament for the first time. And you all know the biblical quote, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. Well, maybe the comparison is a little bit forced and exaggerated, but I definitely started to feel like that particular camel in the story. But jokes aside, I clearly remember the year 2000, and as fresh graduates, we were really eager to become member of the European Union as the biggest peace project, how it's often mentioned in the world. And believe me, after going through the turbulent 90s in the Balkans, the peace was definitely a very sought-after commodity for all of us. But in spite of all our hopes and expectations, it became obvious rather soon that the Western Balkan countries have still a lot to do and a lot to wait before they get members. And this was very puzzling and in a way contradictory for me, because the EU already at that point expanded further south and further east than those countries on the Balkan Peninsula. And it was always beyond me how come that the inclusion of this region was something unmanageable. After all, we are talking about an area which is smaller than Romania, and we are talking of a maximum of around 20 million inhabitants altogether. And on the other hand, in 2015, for example, during the migration crisis, we all saw this Wir schaffen das attitude. And it was very strange and somewhat sobering and disappointing in a way also that towards the people who were arriving to Europe from the furthest part of the world, usually the Western member countries, who are also mainly the Eurosceptics ones, were very much open and welcoming. And on the other hand, they are still very much skeptical and very much doubtful when it comes to their fellow Europeans. Because beyond any doubt, these nations from the Balkans are European, and they are sharing with the rest of the EU, not just the continent, but also culture, traditions, religion. So maybe it's getting a bit more personal than I thought, but I just like to give you a short insight what is my starting position, but I would like to have some more concrete elements now in my speech also. I want to mention the fact that we need to take a closer look on the nature of enlargement policy, because what we could see during the last couple of years or decades even, that enlargement policy got its political nature. And I think that all statutory changes in the EU's previous history, be it the creation of the coal and steel community, be it the changing of the founding treaties, taking on board new members, or, as a matter of fact, losing a member, all these different choices and decisions were highly political. And therefore, it was again very strange for me to see that the administrative side of the process was getting more and more increased. And I think that's a fundamental mistake, because you cannot treat this process as an administrative one. Because in administrative procedure, if you submit all your documents, if you submit all the necessary criteria, then you will receive eventually a positive decision. But when it comes to political matters, there is no guarantee that you will get to that point, that you will obtain a political or positive decision. And the only thing that is certain when it comes to political matters is that you perhaps get criticized for those, and be it from your political opponents, be it from your even colleagues or citizens. And with hindsight, I'm convinced that the founding fathers, Schuman or de Gasperi, couldn't have created the today's EU Union if they had previously made some public opinion polls. But that's maybe another story. And to be honest, what is fascinating about the founding fathers today is that they got the courage and the bravery and the foresight and the responsibility to do this step. And in a way, I think that we need to get back to the true nature of the enlargement policy, and that's a political one. And emphasizing the administrative aspect of the process is a way only an escape strategy from taking responsibility. And with these playing smokes and mirrors, it is only causing a great damage to EU's credibility and to its global position. And in order to Europe to become stronger on the global scale, I think first and foremost, it has to become strong here in Europe, on its own turf. So the inclusion of Western Balkans is an excellent tool to achieve this goal. And if we embrace the true nature, the political nature of enlargement, of the enlargement policy, then we can starting to do real business, the practical politics, which is my second point. Because practical campaigning in the West and the East usually works in the same way. You need to show results, not just empty promises. And when it comes to enlargement, after 20 years of waiting, it's definitely you have to show something more concrete to gain and regain the trust of citizens. And I was always surprised by the fact that some very much experienced Western politicians were criticizing their fellow politicians in the candidate countries for not doing domestic politics with EU accession enough, and accusing them for building relations with other global players. But let's be realistic, what is the alternative that they are proposing? I think that everybody would be grateful in the region, and everybody would welcome, for example, an investment coming from Netherlands in the ports of Montenegro or Albania, because the Netherlands is well known for that. Or if the French would get involved in expanding or building the high-speed railway network, deploying their TGV technology. But that's not happening. So in a way, I was always perplexed by the fact that Western European countries do not see, and they are left uninspired by the Balkan region, and that's it's a kind of a historic tendency that we can observe. And on the other hand, for example, China has immediately recognized the business and strategic interest, and one can do business only with the ones who is showing interest. In Hungarian, we have a saying, eating pancakes is not an obligation. And the most similar English variant that I've found for that is you can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make it drink. And coming to that, I must commend the European Commission, and especially Commissioner Várhelyi, for its multi-billion Western Balkan investment program, which is coupled with the new methodology for accession negotiations, because the Commission did their part. They truly led the horse to water. Now it's the member states' turn to do their part, and we will see what will come out of the General Affairs Council in about a week. And finally, my third point is what could be the way forward without creating the impression that there are some substitutes for full EU membership. Because during the last couple of years, we have witnessed several political and economic initiatives like the Regional Economic Area, Berlin Process, Open Balkans, just to name a few. And strangely, some of them were branded as cheap surrogates for the real thing, or for the real, and they are kind of a hindrance for candidate countries to get faster and closer to the EU. But I would argue otherwise, because if you take a closer look at previous enlargement rounds, you see that there are some specificities in all their procedural features. And all these different initiatives and ideas can be used as stepping stones. For example, in the case of Austria, and this was very interesting to find that Austria applied for EU membership on the 7th of July 1989. And only 3 weeks later, the Council agreed to launch the accession process. The membership negotiations of Austria started in 93, and full membership was reached already in 95, as we well know. And during this time, Austria was an active EFTA member. And while at the same time, the Delors Commission was started to prepare the European Economic Areas agreements, which were specifically crafted to build a bridge between the then EEC and the EFTA countries. And the application of EU membership did not hinder Austria to sign the EEA agreement in '92. What's more, Austria was in deep negotiations to finalize its membership when the EEA agreement entered into force in '94. And nevertheless, Austria got a full-fledged membership in '95. So what I'm trying to convey here is that apart from the incredibly short timeline that Austria got a full membership and settled all these things, is that neither EFTA nor joining the EEA hindered Austria's aspiration to gain full membership. And in the case of the Western Balkan countries, you already have political economic initiatives, but you also have cooperation of platforms with various institutional frameworks, such as the CEFTA or the energy and transport communities. And you also have the almost forgotten stabilization and association agreements, which are bilateral instruments. So in my view, all these existing instruments can be reused, altered, or re-equipped with additional features and functions for the purpose of the so-called phasing in. And the new methodology of the Commission already hinted in this direction. And the example of Austria, but we can find it in also many places, it's obvious that if there is a political will, there will be a way to achieve the goal. But with that thought, I'm getting back to the square one, is that we need to embrace the true political nature of enlargement, and that is a political one, and that's a conditio sine qua non. And because there is no administrative bypass, no checklist, no benchmark or legal instrument that can save European politicians the trouble to finally take some difficult and highly political decisions. But I think that is called leadership, and that is what we need the most now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andor, and thank you also for your personal approach. I think that was also very important. Last but not least, I welcome Gašper Dovžan, State Secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Slovenia. Thank you for being with us here today, and we are very keen to listen to you about the Slovenian approach to enlargement policy, the Slovenian presidency's approach, and thanks for everything the Slovenian presidency already did so far for this enlargement process to be in the pipeline and remain in the pipeline. And we hope that next week, we have big hopes in the Slovenian presidency that next week or during the General Affairs Council, and there will be some decision taken, and there will be a push towards the process. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Dear Minister Varga, thank you very much for the invitation and for hosting this excellent event. Dear Commissioner Várhelyi, dear Minister Joksimović, dear Member of European Parliament Deli, I'm really glad to be in this distinguished company today at this distinguished institution and such a beautiful building. So it's really a pleasure to be here and having a really open debate on the future of Europe. That, of course, entails also, as we all believe, enlargement. Much has already been said, so I don't think I will say something new, but it has to be said every time that enlargement really is key strategic choice for Europe and the key question of our future. If you look at the map at the moment, you can see very easily that enlargement is far from being complete. And as long as it stays like this, the political process that started with the fall of the Berlin Wall is not complete. And I think it has been said already today that sometimes enlargement is being tackled too technically. And indeed, enlargement is far from a technical process. Of course, it's also a technical process because you need to negotiate and you need to fulfill the criteria. But first of all, it's a political process that should lead the countries of Europe together to the common platform that we call today European Union. The question of organizing the relations between member states and the relations to the outside world in the old continent, basically, it's very old. And it's happening all the time. And at the moment, after the Second World War, we think we have a better system than we ever had. And this is European Union. Of course, we have talked about already today, especially Minister Szijjártó had a couple of ideas how to improve it. But the fact is, it's a very good system. We have common rules. We have, in principle, equality of member states, and we are trying to compete together. And as a team, we are far better than on our own. And this is, of course, something that we need to share with those European countries that would like to become European members, and especially European Union members, and especially the countries of Western Balkans. Of course, it's not only about, we spoke about the need of the countries of the region to deliver on reforms when it comes to fight against corruption, rule of law, media freedom, etc. Of course, the Copenhagen criteria are very important because we need sort of convergence to be, since the law, the common law, is something that really binds us. But on the other hand, what we also need is credibility of the EU. And we saw that in the last couple of years, here the EU, and we have to be honest with this, hasn't delivered as unity. There are several reasons for this. But I think the major reason is that we have become too much inward looking due to all sorts of crises. We went through financial crisis, we went through migration crisis, and it's far from being over. We were and still are basically preoccupied with Brexit. So these are all reasons, apart from internal political debates in each of the member states. This is, I would say, the main reason why the enlargement has become, instead of a key strategic issue, only an agenda item that as soon as there is a crisis to tackle slips off the agenda. And this is basically wrong. And this was our analysis when we were drafting our presidency priorities. And we said we really have to debate enlargement in terms of strategic choice, which basically is. And this is why we organized and hosted the EU Western Balkans Summit at the beginning of October near Kran at Brdo. We were very glad that we reached an agreement on that declaration. It's no secret that we were, as Slovenia and as presidency, even more ambitious. But nevertheless, we have commitment, clear political commitments of the EU towards countries of the region. We also have clear commitment that the summits will be held regularly which is very good because now we have clear political path of dialogue. And we also have, after quite a long time, the word enlargement in the declaration. So these were, let's say, 3 breakthroughs which are important for the future. So besides this, and I think it's very important what also Commissioner Várhelyi explained, all the activities that are launched by the Commission in order to help the region to integrate and to develop. And the EU financial package has been mentioned of 9 billion with possibility of engaging altogether 30 billion guarantees for the region. This is a really good opportunity that should not be wasted. And I think it's something that will define the path, economic and social path of the region for the next decade. And it's a tremendous opportunity to improve connectivity, to provide more jobs, to attract young people to stay at home, to see the perspective, but also to converge with the European Union when it comes to improving welfare. And we are seeing also in some countries, and especially in Serbia, the minister is present here, we are seeing very positive economical developments. And I think this needs to be strengthened, and with the EU financial package, this will also be possible. Of course, to be more concrete, General Affairs Council next week has been mentioned. We have a couple of nuts to crack in the next days. We are negotiating the enlargement conclusions. It's not yet clear whether we will be able to adopt them by unanimity. And as you know, enlargement is a policy where unanimity is required. So we are really adamant and are negotiating hard to achieve the conclusions. It would be after quite a while. The next thing is that we are waiting, but also supporting as much as we can the dialogue between Bulgaria and North Macedonia on the several bilateral issues that concern identity and, of course, very important topics, but not necessarily, when it comes to European future, I would say not necessarily topics that should be negotiated in the enlargement negotiations. But nevertheless, it's still, I think, a slight chance. So we are hoping that there is going to be an agreement. If not, I don't want to speculate, but we will make everything in our power as presidency to facilitate the breakthrough. It would be really important for the region because it would resolve a deadlock and enable not only North Macedonia but also Albania to formally start the accession negotiations. One thing also needs to be mentioned. We are also preparing for the organization of 2 intergovernmental conferences with Montenegro, more political intergovernmental conference, and with Serbia, where we hope there are going to be some deliverables, and we are still working on them. So, and with this more concrete outline, let me make a short reflection also on the future of Europe. This debate has been basically around for quite some time. So but it's for the first time that we have organized a debate in a framework of a conference, that we agreed, the three institutions, and included also the citizens. Unfortunately, at the beginning, it was not possible to achieve that also the countries, especially those that are already candidate countries, would be also part of the conference officially, because we had a good example to follow, like the Convention on the Future of Europe. But this was not possible. Nevertheless, we achieved, I would say, two things. The first one was to push through and to achieve that this was, I would say, more easy, because also the Commission and also the European Parliament supported this very vigorously, that there's no geo-blocking on the digital platform. So, and this enables everyone, also the citizens of the Western Balkan region, to participate and be part of the reflection process and provide concrete ideas for the future. I think this is very important. The next that has been achieved during our presidency was that we were able to achieve an agreement on including the Western Balkan 6 partners, to invite them as key stakeholders also to the conference plenary. And we as presidency, we are trying to open the process further, because we think that also Eastern partners should get those that really want to or are considering asking for EU membership should also receive, let's say, an invitation. But it is something that still has to be decided upon. But we were definitely very adamant supporters of opening the conference also for important stakeholders, also for example, like different religion groups to be part of the process and to provide for their ideas. We'll see how the whole process will continue. Unfortunately, it has been a little bit, I wouldn't say interrupted, but delayed due to the pandemic. And at the moment, we are still facing, or again facing, deteriorating situation. So we are hoping that we will be able to, with the help of new digital technology, to continue the process further without much delay, including also the very important ideas and proposals coming from the region and from other stakeholders, not only from institutions, but also from citizens. And let me conclude maybe with one, I would say, reminder that there's also a great danger in the debate on the whole process on the future of Europe. And I think the biggest danger, the way I see it, is that there are certain attempts to decouple European democracy from democracy as such, because in the European Union we are multi-level governance systems, and we have, of course, member states as masters of the treaties, and of course some of the member states also have regions where democracy is also embedded, also on local levels. So this is very important. And speaking about European democracy, of course it's important, but to detach the process of, let's say, or start the process of democratization at the EU level, I think this is something that really needs to be thought through very carefully, and all those proposals that will come that will try to detach this I would say, European democracy from the other levels of democracy should be paid very careful attention to. And finally, what I think is the final goal or should be the final goal of the whole debate. I think it's, of course, how to make EU more robust for future crises, how to make the EU more externally also resilient and strong, but at the same time maintain the necessary internal flexibility so that member states can do not have the feeling that the pressure from the center is too strong, or that national identities cannot be cannot thrive. So these are very important, I would say, questions, and I think here we have to find the proper balance on ensuring external strength and maintaining internal flexibility, that we will not risk, I would say, any further scenarios that we have seen with Brexit. So with this, let me conclude. Thank you again very much, and I'll be more than happy to comment during the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. State Secretary, for your excellent presentation and your interesting thoughts. We can very much agree what you have just said with the challenges and what we have to think over when we are discussing the future of Europe in the framework of this conference. And now we come to the question and answers. So let's have a lovely debate. I open now the floor for the audience. I will ask you very much to start to introducing yourself when you put your questions, and limit to short questions in order to be able to listen to the answers from the panelists. Please, Anna.
Köszönöm a szót. Magyar Anna vagyok.
Anna Magyar. I am a member of the Hungarian delegation of the Committee on the Brussels regions and the Deputy Chair of the committee. First of all, I'd like to thank the Madam Minister for organizing this conference and also her thoughts in the same way as the thoughts of the Commissioner. And I asked for the floor because I'm really affected by this topic. Just a few weeks ago, I managed to get an assignment as a rapporteur in the Committee of the Regions focusing on enlargement. I have fought for this position and I'm pleased I succeeded. And with that, I'm going to cause another problem to Jadranka Joksimović. There will be yet another Hungarian who will be arguing for extension. What I'd like to say is that perhaps the work of the Committee of the Regions is not that well known. We are not in the focus of public interest. However, we can make a significant contribution when it comes to documents submitted to the Parliament and to the European Commission by focusing on regional aspects, regional points. And we also have the opportunity to formulate messages that perhaps were not given enough attention on other platforms. And I'd like to say a special thank you to the State Secretary for mentioning multi-layer democracy, which indeed works in our Commission. Please let me explain that in the Committee of the Regions, members who come from the Central and Eastern European region are the members who show most interest towards extension, and it's a significant challenge for us to convince members from the Western countries and to explain to them why it would be a win-win position if we manage to depart from this deadlock that we can see today. As for the Future of Europe conference, it was Mr. Mr. Rampuy, who had an agenda item at the plenary session for the last time, where I wanted to draw his attention to the fact that the future of Europe is not only the future of the euro. We have more to talk about, like Western Balkans countries, and as a rapporteur, I'd like to actually add some thoughts to this report that will be adopted in late June or early July, points that also focus on the specificities of the region and specific messages from you in Serbia or other Western Balkans countries. So I'd like to make this cooperation more personal. Thank you. Thank you, Anna. And we wish you much success with your report and also with your work in the Committee of the Regions.
And then I will ask the panelists to answer your questions. Igen? Kedves Ágnes, igen. It's a bit tricky with the mask.
Okay, it looks like it's an issue for women. Men have an advantage here. So a very warm welcome from me. I'm Ágnes Chair, member of the European Economic and Social Committee. The only difference is that I have been involved since 2004, and I am very pleased to report that back then we started our work together with Anna Magyar. These two bodies, institutions, serve as advisory bodies to the European Commission and European Parliament, and they are organized on a party basis while we represent civil society. I'd like to thank the chair and the ministers for organizing this event series. They all represent very high quality standards, and we who participate from Brussels and at the level of the member states in this series of events consider this event to be of outstanding quality, not only because we can welcome the Commissioner and representatives of the European Parliament, and a special welcome to the Madam Minister from Slovenia, but also because under our neighbourhood policy, we have been actively participating in this accession process. Although the MP said this was a place for questions and answers, I just wanted to make a contribution because I'm co-rapporteur of the EU-China Roundtable, which focuses on cooperation in the post-COVID area, and we'll have a meeting with the Chinese party on the 14th of December. Minister Szijjártó talked about other economic factors prevailing in the region, highlighting the role of China in the investment policy. He quoted some very interesting figures about how we could actually make up for what we lost through Brexit, through the Western Balkan states. And I asked for the opportunity to say something because the minister quoted two very important figures. The first being the spending on social spendings compared to the rest of the world. And I'd like to emphasize that the future and competitiveness on Europe, in my view, does not depend on how the European Union will reduce social spending, as since after the Second World War, this is the basis of European social policy. But it's more a question of how they can add factors of democratic thinking, like justice, rule of law, and how they can reflect that in their investment policy. So my question is to the commissioner responsible for extension, how through their activities they can promote the European Union's competitiveness and investment policies so that investments are not completed through a reduction in social spendings, and how can the European Union reach a leading role if it talks about basic rights and democracy, as it was done by the Madam Minister as well, and what kind of internal efforts will we make to make sure that in bilateral commercial agreements and in foreign policy we indeed enforce democratic rights, not only at home in the European Union, and how we can make ourselves stronger to ensure that competitiveness doesn't push us towards poverty and misery, and to make sure we don't grow gaps instead of reducing gaps. Thank you. Thank you very much, Agnes, and we wish you much success in your work as a rapporteur. And the next question.
Unfortunately, I can't see good the faces, so I'm sorry if I don't.
Well, it's beautiful face, don't worry. Well, I'm Marjan Bojadjiev. I will speak in the second panel, but I believe that some of the officials will not be here, so a quick question. EMP from Vojvodina mentioned the EEA, and my speech is actually that Western Balkans should be introduced in the EEA as the first steps toward the EU. In the meantime, we have a fantastic initiative which is called Mini Schengen, now the Open Balkan, which is countries without borders, free movements of goods. Currently, only 3 of the Western Balkans are there. This is Serbia, Macedonia, and North Albania. But we don't see any support from European Union. At least our perception is that EU Commission does not support the Open Balkan initiative. Europe started as Europe of regions. Europe started as European Commission for Iron and Coal and Pentagonal and Visegrad 4. So the question is why European Union does not support the Open Balkan as a first step towards the integration of these countries. Thank you very much.
May I ask you to introduce yourself?
Yes. Marjan Bojadjiev, University American College, Skopje, Republic of North Macedonia. I'm speaking at the second panel, but I believe that most of the officials will not be here, so I abused my powers now to ask these questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and wish you success for the next panel in the afternoon. Next question, yes, we have a gentleman in the second row.
Good morning. My name is István Balogh. I'm coming from Hungary, and I'm a member, as Mrs. Chair mentioned here before, the European Economic and Social Committee. I have 2 questions, one to Olivér Várhelyi, whom I know from his previous position, and then to Mrs. Varga. The first, Commissioner, you referred to the introductory program of the von der Leyen Commission, saying that Western Balkan enlargement is one of the key priorities of the Commission. Now we are in December 2021. We are facing the French presidency. Commissioner Várhelyi, you are best to learn what is right on the situation in your Commission and from the perspective of French presidency. This presidency had a meeting with us 2 weeks ago in Paris. There, the Balkan enlargement was not among the priorities, but maybe you will learn better. And the second question goes to Mrs. Varga. We did a framework of Visegrad 4 countries. Just a month ago, together with these 2 ladies from ESC, we had a meeting next to Gdańsk in Sopot, meeting Polish students and discussing with them the conference on the future of Europe-related issues. And believe me or not, these Polish students were very much in favor, without asking them, of the enlargement issue, saying that not from the perspective of geopolitical, but from the perspective of Europe is very important. And hence my second question, and what is the situation between the governments of Visegrad 4? In other words, governments of Poland, Hungary, Czech, and Slovak Republic, what is their point when it comes to the Western Balkan enlargement? Are they in the support, or is it only Hungary from the point of view of being a neighbor to Serbia and other Balkan countries? What is the view there? Thank you very much.
Thank you, köszönjük, Komorowski úr. Van-e egyéb kérdés?
Thank you, Mr. Komorowski. Are there any more questions? If there are no more questions, then I'd like to pass the floor to the presenters, the panelists.
And I will go, if you allow, from that ways. So first, if you want to add anything, Mr. Deli, and then come towards the middle of the table. So, Andor, please.
I don't know whether this works or not. Probably not. But yeah, I will be very short, actually referring to the distinguished professor's intervention. I think that there are some ways, and as I said in my speech also, I believe that in this phasing in approach, and that we need to use every opportunity to make some progress. And indeed, that is, I find your idea sympathetic personally, but of course, I'm not in that position to elaborate or to decide on these things. And I know Magyar Anna very much, very good, and I think that it is very important to make a stronger link between the Parliament and the consultative bodies such as the Committee of Regions. So, I would really encourage you to have some meetings despite of the COVID and the pandemic to exchange what we can do in the Parliament and what you can do, and that's the same for the ECOSOC as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. State Secretary, please. Mr. Dovžan.
Thank you very much. Very shortly on, I think Committee of Region has an important role to play. We had extremely good cooperation also since the beginning of our presidency on multiple issues, including on enlargement and of course rural development. And I think also for the future, what we are seeing is that it's a challenge of our development to see regions more in bigger terms. And this is why we have, and the Commission has also developed this macro-regional approach to strategies. And as Slovenia, we are quite active in all those macro-regional strategies. And we will be more than happy if there's another one for the Mediterranean basin. So I think this is very important policy approach to see the whole regions and when it comes to tackling issues like transportation or climate change or developmental issues. I think this is very important. When it comes to the question of priorities, I think there was a question. Of course, member states, when they prepare the presidency, they make their own analysis. So and for us, I've been very clear how we made this analysis and how we end up with the conclusion how important enlargement is. And unfortunately, this is not, I would say, an assessment fully shared by all member states, but not, I would say, there are various reasons for this, but obviously internal political debate, of course, is challenging, and this is why the adamant supporters and staunch supporters of enlargement have to really use our time and to do as much as we can in order to make the process further. So I think this is all what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. State Secretary. Mrs. Jadranka Joksimović, Minister, please.
Thank you. I would just make two comments on very important questions and ideas that have been raised here. First of all, on Committee of Regions, as also my colleague Dovžan mentioned, I think it's so, first of all, congratulations for your nomination and thank you for make additional problems for Serbia. But however, I really think that it is so important to cooperate at the level of Committee of Regions, because one important cluster that we are now negotiating is, and that we will prepare in future, it's Cluster 5, which is a cluster gathering together politics, common politics of cohesion policy, resources and agricultural policy. And this is something which we never underestimate in our accession process. On the contrary, for example, I am also National IPA coordinator, meaning that we are programming pre-accession funds available for the accession countries and also other bilateral and multilateral development assistance. And I really think that with Hungary, for example, we have excellent cooperation on in the field, on the ground, with the cross-border cooperation that a lot of local municipalities in Hungary and near, let's say, border in this area and also in Serbia have done a lot. I would just mention one excellent example that our President Vukčević and Prime Minister Orban visited 2 years ago. It was a synagogue in Subotica that we, as a cultural heritage, European cultural heritage, that we have reconstructed, and with Prime Minister Orban and President Vukčević, it was very visible for the first of all European Union funds, but of course it's something that will contribute to people and the cultural heritage as an important issue. But nevertheless, there are a lot of other really tangible projects for our people in the cross-border region. For example, local infrastructure, local schools, also medical centers, etc., that we have jointly invested with the grants from European Union and of course from the local budget and our budgets. And I think this is so important because it raises, I would say, and supports people-to-people diplomacy and region-to-region diplomacy, which will be one of the very important aspects of our future membership, just as Hungary did well, I think, with the regional approach and using cohesion funds after your accession to European Union. So we don't see that EU is some kind of ATM or bank machine, that's for sure, but we should use everything that is available for us in this process and try to decrease this disproportion between the regions when it comes to the economic wealth and when it comes to the figures, economical figures in the regions, in order to reach convergence and to really improve the people's lives. So thank you very much, and we will really in future, I think, especially raise the importance of the Committee of the Regions and participation of our regions, especially the province of Vojvodina, but also all others in the Serbia. And we have, I think, some representations and some representatives in the Committee of Region. I hope that you will help us as well in that area. On the other hand, I think that it's the question of open Balkan that has been raised is a very important one. Originally, as you said, it was mentioned and titled as a mini Schengen initiative. It was not very pleasant title for some sensitive years. So it has been changed to the Open Balkan initiative. And you have noticed some kind of, let's say, reluctance from some maybe member states in European Union about the Open Balkan. I think it's not really some kind of reluctance. It was like, you know, this initiative came, the generic idea was from the region. So it was not mediated and facilitated by the EU or some member states. It was initiative came out of free, I would say, leaders of the region. It was from Prime Minister Rama from Albania, Prime Minister Zaev, and President Vukčić from Serbia, and they agreed to make additional platform, not in order to neglect other regional initiatives, on the contrary, to support them by the additional platform of improving political trust. That's the main point, because we have excellent Berlin Process Initiative, to be very frank. It brought a lot of benefits to the region. It has been initiated in 2014 by mostly by Germany and Chancellor Merkel, and after that it was conducted by different partners on annual basis. It was Austria, France, Italy, also North Macedonia as well, first time from the region, and it brought a lot of really good talks and good projects for the region. The idea of Open Balkan, it was not to overlap or to neglect the initiatives. It was the matter of if there is a space, and we found a space for more political trust among some partners. And I think it's not any kind of opposition to other initiatives. I think that it's always good to have a lot of initiatives, because it's also added channel platform or open channel platform for different talks, for different aspects, because there are a lot of outstanding issues in the region, when it comes to the political issues, when it comes to economical cooperation and some other things, infrastructural, of course, ideas for projects, etc., etc. So I always think it's always good to have different links for communication. It will help. If you talk with someone, it will always help. And I really think that no one should be, reluctant about the idea. It's open for everyone. And by the way, my idea was, if we say Open Balkan, that means, but that was only my idea, to be very frank, to call all Balkan countries, because Balkan is not only a Western Balkan. Balkan is also Bulgaria, Romania, Greece. Those are the biggest Balkan countries already being part of European Union. But the core of the idea is for the Western Balkan, to be honest. But I think it's very good to say Open Balkan, which means that the cooperation is open for everyone. However, I just want to underline that there's nothing to be worried about. It's only a good and I would say good and prosperous initiative for the people of all countries that will join to Open Balkan. But nevertheless, we are delivering on the ideas and goals of the Berlin process and Brdo-Brioni process, as well as also one of the good initiatives, regional initiatives. There's no need to make any artificial competition between initiatives. It's all those initiatives needs to meet the most important goal, the better political, I would say, links and better living standard for our people. That's the goal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jadranka. Thank you. Miniszter asszony, kedves Judit.
Thank you very much, Inga. Since I was addressed by a question, I would just take the opportunity to say thanks again for all our distinguished speakers. Thank you very much for coming here. And since this is the fourth high-level conference in the framework of the Future of Europe conferencing, I'm sure that this conference seems to be the most successful so far, and we are just in the middle of it. So thank you very much for your physical presence. All of our speakers could contribute to this debate with a special color, with a special angle of perspectives. And I'm grateful for Jadranka for the honesty, which is really energizing for us and helps the open discussion. Thank you very much for Gašper for giving fresh ideas and also flashing some lights on the work of the presidency, what they have done for the enlargement case. And thank you very much as well, Commissioner, to list all those activities and future plans, what are very, very promising for our case at a European Commission commitment level. And thank you, Andor, for being out of the box as a free parliamentarian here in the room. So, and I would like to also say congratulations to our members in the ECOSOC and in the Committee of the Regions. Thank you very much for being active and also representing not only Hungarian but regional and also horizontal interest in your work in Brussels. When it comes to the question, Mr. Komorowski, I'm happy to see you here. Actually, we have been working together in the past when I was assistant in the European Parliament, so I'm happy to greet you in this conference as well. If you asked Hungarian students, I'm pretty sure that the same answer, the same enthusiasm would be about Western Balkan enlargement and making Europe larger, not necessarily deeper. So what we always say, we need a smarter Europe, which sees more integration where there is an added value, and we see a larger Europe with new and fresh member states contributing not only to our economic success, but also to our security challenges. So we are also holding regular meetings with student circles from Hungarian universities. They are not this large scale, but they are very valuable, and we have also face-to-face dialogues, discussions with students or freshmen, and they all see the point and the whole enlargement. They see that it is the key for the future of the continent. The V4 is fully committed. We speak one voice when it comes to enlargement. Hungary is now holding the presidency until next June. We always start with the council formation meetings with a separate V4 meeting. And whenever there is a chance to include in the texts which are circulated in the council, when there is a possibility to enhance the importance of enlargement, V4 is always contributing to these issues. And as I also said in my introduction, there is this international Visegrad Fund where these countries are also giving concrete contributions to the members of the West Balkan region, where from capacity building through the education, innovation, and also reinforcing the undertaking sector, we are actively there. Not to mention when it comes to border protection. So thank you very much for the question, and for the audience, I'm really grateful that you are here physically with us and take part in the vivid discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Judith. Commissioner, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I would combine one comment and one question that I received. First on the Magyar from the Committee of the Regions. Where could the Committee of the Region help us? Of course, the Committee of the Region is a unique institution in the European architecture. And where it could help us is to explain to our Western Balkan partners how regional cooperation can not only speed up the economic recovery and the social recovery, but also how local initiatives can contribute at a much larger extent to the economy and the social cohesion of the entire region. Meaning cooperation between the different regions and the different partners within the Western Balkans, but also between EU membership regions, member states regions with Western Balkan regions. There, I think we have quite a bit to do. And there, we would also need the regions to come out much stronger to explain what their needs are and what the basic bottlenecks in front of the four freedoms could be in these regions. And I'm turning to some of the answers that I have for this question. And I mentioned in my speech the Common Regional Market Initiative. The Common Regional Market Initiative was based basically on the mini Schengen idea, which is the first large-scale initiative emerging from the region itself, bringing the four freedoms into reality. So the free movement of goods, people, services, capital, establishment. And this initiative is key to the success of the region itself. It is not only key for EU enlargement and integration to happen in the Western Balkans, but also it is key for the region itself because it is a low-hanging fruit in front of the integration of the entire region. So the Commission is supporting any of these ideas. Our only request to the region was to keep it open and try to combine with all the reforms that are done in relation to the European perspective of the region. And this is why we have been promoting this idea as the common regional market. The common regional market to be part of the Berlin process, which is under the EU flag, which means that we can then combine the positive effects of the economic and investment plan with the common regional market. That was the original idea. However, unfortunately, after everybody has agreed in the Western Balkans, we have seen one partner leaving this cooperation. And this is where the Open Balkan initiative submerged or resubmerged in the political discussions, making it clear that the rest of the region would still want to implement this. So the Commission is supporting this idea. The Commission is supporting bringing forward the implementation of the 4 freedoms in the Western Balkan regions. But we want this to be done in accordance with the EU norms so that you don't have to do the reforms twice and that it will bring delivery on EU reforms faster. Of course, the ideal solution is to have everybody. And it's not a question of name, but a question of substance. And this is why I do hope that, that the partner who has left the common regional market will reconsider its choice and will come back to the common regional market. So in that sense, it's not a question of labels that we should be looking at, but the substance of the cooperation. On the question to Mrs. Chair, how do we help to create an investors' climate which is not on the expense of the social convergence? The answer is to be found in the economic and investment plan. The economic and investment plan, on one hand, tries to tackle the big bottlenecks in front of the economic development of these regions. We're missing highway connections, railway connections between the capitals, which is a prerequisite of any investors' climate. We have energy scarcity in the region, which is a limit to any investments. We have a strong reliance on coal, which is a health hazard, on the other hand, where we would like to contribute to phase that out quickly and also extend the available energy sources in the region. So this is for the economy. But if you look at the social part of the economic and investment plan, you will see that we not only promote social convergence as such, so to try to bring development to regions that are least developed, not only in relation to Europe, but also within the region. We would like to mobilize also the part of the society that is inactive. To give you an example, we have been addressing the issue of the Roma minority. It's a huge minority in the Western Balkans. I don't want to offend anybody, but largely forgotten. Largely forgotten in the sense that they are not active in the economy. They don't have an economic perspective, and therefore they don't have a social perspective either. And we would like to mobilize the Roma community through education, through providing job opportunities, to remobilize this part of the society which is becoming completely inactive. This is one of the social elements. We are also investing very heavily in the healthcare sector to bring the the basic, mid-level, and also high-level healthcare services to a level comparable to ours. We are investing also in the social part of the society, because it is only through that first of all, we will have long-term possibility for growth and jobs, and that we will be able to start to convince the large population, 4 million people out of 18, who has left the Western Balkans to have their living elsewhere. It will take time. It's not something that we will deliver from one day to the next, but this is going to be a midterm, long-term target, 10, 15, 20 years from now, when we hope to see that the people will gradually move back because they have an economic and a social perspective. And finally, to Mr. Komorowski, what to expect from the French presidency. You know, presidencies are normally delivering on the EU agenda, whatever the EU agenda is actually dealing with. So I do hope that during the French presidency, we will continue to deliver on all the decisions that we can make and we should make. You shouldn't expect landslide decisions being made, but every single decision counts. Opening clusters with Serbia next week, I do hope we take that decision. Political IGC with Montenegro, I do hope that we will take that step. Having the first IGC with North Macedonia and Albania, maybe it's more difficult, but I do hope that we will make that step. Enlargement is made of each and every step of the way and at the right time. If we miss that, then the occasion might not come back. And therefore, I'm very hopeful that the French presidency, being a founding member, has all the knowledge and capacity to know when and how the decisions can be and will be made. Thank you.
Thank you. Kinga, if I may add something, it's really important because I have forgotten, but I was listening Commissioner Várhelyi, and then I remember the question is, how can EU contribute? I just want to give you an example of two excellent core value projects, infrastructural ones supported by the EU throughout the Economic Investment Plan and Western Balkan Investment Framework, which is an multi-country IPA, pre-accession funds. First very important project is a high-speed railway between Belgrade and Niš, which means the southern part of Serbia. And in addition, when we build our Belgrade-Budapest, high-speed railroad track, that will actually connect also you from Budapest with the southern part of Serbia, which is I would say, the fastest way to reach, Greece and go to the eastern part of this Corridor 10. So I really think this is extremely important project. It will be financed with a huge grant from the European Union, but also for favorable loans from the European Investment Bank and EBRD as well. And the second one, just a couple of days ago, we started official works on the second very important project. Our President Vukčević was there and ambassador from EU. It's a Belgrade-Pristina highway. We call that highway Peace Highway, which will definitely bring additional value, of course, infrastructural one, connecting people, and of course, with the importance for the economical, I would say, development of the region. But I think it will bring additional value of this mutual, I would say, raising the mutual trust. And that's why it will contribute to the peace and stability of the region. It will be also financed by the EU with a huge amount of grant. For the first section, it's a 40 million euros of grant, and about 180 million of euros of favorable loans from European Investment Bank and European Bank for the Reconstruction and Development. So definitely those two projects shows how European Union can really tangibly contribute to the development of the region, connecting people, connecting Europe, because all those all those highways and railroads are part of the core European transport network. It's also important for European Union, but also for the region. That's the concrete example how European Union can contribute to this important goal. Thank you.
Thank you, Jadranka. Well, my final role is here to thank for all the speakers for their valuable input, for the audience for your interest and participation here in this important event, and after all to thank for Minister Varga, kedves Judit, for organizing this event, for the Ministry of Justice, for the Mádl Institute. I think it was very timely and important to organize this event right now. And let me conclude in Hungarian, just a few words, as at the beginning I was very constrained about the time, which we are now passing over our time limit with the several minutes, but just very short remarks in Hungarian before I invite you to a reception outside. Tehát az Európa jövőjéről szóló gondolkodás megkerülhetetlen.
Well, our thinking about the future of Europe must focus on the matter of extension. This is what we discussed this morning. The Western Balkans region is an integral part of Europe, and the country is surrounded by EU member states from all sides, so the prosperity and stability of the EU in the future is in the interest, geopolitical interest of the European Union. And that's why we need to give the region an accession perspective, and each step matters in this process, as we heard from Commissioner Várhelyi, because otherwise the European Union will bring its own credibility into question. We will think about the future of Europe in this conference, but even after the conference we need to organically involve countries in the West Balkans region. And I think in this planning process, in this way of thinking, today's conference also made a significant contribution. So thank you very much for your participation. We will continue the conference. This was the morning panel, so we look forward to welcoming you back to the afternoon panel, which is titled Historical Legal Arguments for Extension, and then I'd like to invite you to a small standing reception. Thank you.